With the Google Pixel Fold's release looming large on the horizon, I thought it might be fun to take a look at some of the official footage that we have seen and try and break down a little bit about how multitasking is going to work on this device. Obviously, this channel has a viewership full of people who love multitasking on their Z Fold devices, on their Surface Duo devices, and there's been a bit of confusion as to how the Pixel Fold will differ, so let's try and kind of clear that stuff up. One of the biggest ways where it's going to differ from the Fold, and maybe less from the Duo, is in regard to the aspect ratio. The Pixel Fold is a device that opens up into landscape orientation, which means that when you split screen with two apps on the screen, each app gets a wider space to work within compared to the Z Fold, unless you take your Z Fold and you turn it 90 degrees to either side, and at that point, you have a screen and an aspect ratio that is effectively exactly the same as the Google Pixel Fold, and one that is more reminiscent of the Surface Duo, which gives you two rather wide screens to work with. Now, obviously, the size and shape of the screens are only part of how the multitasking experience will work. So like I said, we're going to take a look at some footage here, probably like frame by frame some of this stuff, and probably draw way more information out of these frame by frames than we should be, but I think we're going to do that, and I think it's going to be fun to do. So I've opened up a clip here in VLC Media Player, and I've kind of just gone through a couple of things, and I've pulled out some bits that I think are interesting. So this first bit here, some of this is going to potentially repeat, but this first bit here shows two apps side by side on the Pixel Fold. And there's already a couple things here to notice. So we definitely do have our little handle here in the middle, which will allow us to resize these apps one side or the other, right? So we can make this one smaller, the other one bigger, or vice versa. You'll also notice this big bar down here at the bottom, and that is because unlike on the Galaxy Z Fold device, the taskbar automatically hides itself away. We'll see a bit later that there's a gesture that brings it forward. I also want to point out that it says here, split screen requires compatible apps. Does that mean some apps, like Instagram, that naturally don't support split screen, may not support split screen on the Pixel Fold? Obviously, on the Z Fold, this has been forced by Samsung. It is possible that Google has not done the same here. Now, as we frame by frame, we let this play forward, what you're going to see is they have long pressed on this photo in Google Photos, and they are now dragging it directly into the message box in Google Messages, and that allows them to insert that message and send it. And we're going to see this a couple more times. Something on one app, or you could call it one screen if you're imagining a Surface Duo, being drug into another application. Very, very cool functionality. On this next screen, nothing too crazy here. We have a Teams meeting or a Teams chat, Google Meet, I guess is what that actually is. A split screen right next to another application that I don't actually recognize, and I'm sure this is probably another Google application for planning work and things like that. Now this next screen just very briefly shows the camera application. Nothing too crazy there. You can see a button to switch to using the cover display as the viewfinder, so you can take a selfie with your primary camera. Night sight, long exposure, portrait, camera, video, cinematic, and then modes. So quite a few different modes and things you can do in here. No risk of having a sort of stripped down version of the camera app from what I can see. That's gone very quickly. Then we get the weather app, which as you can see here is split down the middle into a dual pane layout. I really like the look of this weather app. Really nice and clean. The settings app follows a similar thing where it is dual pane, and it honestly looks quite good. So this next portion here definitely gets into some more of the meat and potatoes of this. I want to point out though, this down here at the bottom says dual screen support coming fall 2023. What's weird about this is that the only part of the presentation where they called something dual screen was something where both screens were on at once. It was like a translation app where the internal tablet display was showing stuff and the cover display was showing stuff that someone else could be reading. So I don't know why this says dual screen coming fall 2023 on this screen, because this is not the same thing that they were calling dual screen later on in their presentation. So I'm not really sure what to make of that, but let's kind of go through this here. Definitely in some sort of a video call again here. And as we open up the device, let's just skip ahead here course, it's all pixelating out because, VLC does this sometimes, but I think we can still see pretty good here. What we have is this Google Meet call active and the taskbar down here at the bottom. Now, what's interesting here is that in this instance, when she opens it up, it automatically opens up that taskbar. And you can see on that taskbar, you have the dialer app, messages, it looks like maybe slides, Google Docs perhaps, I don't remember which icon that is, Google Drive, the camera, and then this is probably like Meet, right? Very interesting that it pops up on its own. So then she reaches down and she grabs an application, she long presses it and drags it up onto the screen. Now there's something else to be noticed here. As she drags this up, what are you not seeing? You're not seeing any more than 2 possible apps. She's pretty close to the middle, close enough that on the Z Fold, you get the silhouette of a floating window. So I do not believe floating apps are going to be supported on the Pixel Fold. And as she lets it go, it opens up over here. Yes, it was Google Slides. It opens up on the left-hand side. Google Meet slides over. You may also notice that Google Meet is now framed differently. When it was the only app open, it was zoomed in much further. When it's on one side, totally changes the framing. And now as we go ahead now, it looks like we have Google Drive maybe over here, and then some sort of Slides app over here. And she again long presses on a picture and then drags it across and places it into one of her slides. Again, very cool functionality. Now this portion here might actually be on the Pixel tablet, if I'm not mistaken, but the functionality will be exactly the same. We are in Google Photos. As you can see, by 1, you can see that it's Google Photos, but 2, it's actually highlighted here down on the bar. They're gonna grab the slides icon again and drag it up right across the middle. So again, no floating window possible, and then opening it up on the side. And once again, they're long pressing on that photo and bringing it into this new slide. So I mentioned showing that gesture that actually brings up the taskbar. Now this is the one I could find officially from Google. You can probably find some better visuals of this on some other tech creators channels, people that got hands on the Fold, but this is what we're gonna use for now. And he actually says you swipe up from the bottom. Now what's interesting is a swipe up from the bottom actually will dismiss or go home. So there's a difference to this gesture. Let's see if we frame by frame this, if we can kind of tell what's going on. It looks like you can see the bar going up. It's a swipe up from the bottom and then it opens up that taskbar. So I'm not entirely sure how that gesture is going to work and if there's going to be issues with accidentally triggering it when you're simply trying to go home. Let's go back and watch it in real time. You can see there, it's almost like there was a slight delay. Like maybe you touch that little white bar for a moment and hold it and then swipe up, and maybe that's how they're getting around it. But from there, he once again grabs an app, drags it up, and goes into the split screening thing. Now there's something else that I want to check out here myself. Let's look at the apps in the bar. Obviously, this is the app drawer. Dialer, Messages, Photos, YouTube, Gmail, and Camera. Now, why is that important? Because earlier he showed the desktop. And what is on the desktop but those exact same applications? Dialer, Messages, Photos, YouTube, Gmail, and Camera. And that is because the taskbar is simply, just like on the Z Fold, going to take these applications and use them. It's not showing recent applications, which is something that the Z Fold can actually do. The last maybe 2 or 3 on the side of the taskbar show your recently opened apps. This appears to just be these bottom apps. So these are going to be your most switched between apps. Of course, you can still access the other apps by going into the app drawer, but again, it's going to start off with just the ones you have down here. So for me, this leaves us in sort of an interesting predicament. I do think that the form factor, the aspect ratio, the size of those two apps side by side is better on the Pixel Fold. However, I think a lot of Samsung's software implementation looks like it's probably better. Like a lot of things with phones, this is going to come down to subjective preference. And until I get my hands on the Pixel Fold and actually use it, it's going to be really hard for me to decide which implementation I'm going to actually like better in day-to-day usage. So there you go, guys. That's about the most I can possibly pull out of these videos for now. Subscribe for more content just like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.